Somewhere Better by I_am_Ellie on AO3. Episode 75. Chapter 21. Drops of Jupiter. Shouta and Nemuri were out. Like, out. Over 30 miles away from UA. Far enough for the city lights to blur together, and for their location not to matter. They were at a bar. At least Shouta thought it was a bar, because that was quite a bit of alcohol involved, and a significant number of dancing bodies brushing against his back and sides. Their touch, even against his layered sweater, made his skin crawl. Any skin-on-skin contact made him nauseous. The vodka numbed both uncomfortable senses. He had been upset, but he couldn't remember why. Why now? There was a frosted wall of glass separating him from the thing burning at his bone marrow, occupants, and protectives. The booze was buzzing in his veins, warm in his belly. He had popped half a pill of pain medication before he left the house, and it left everything pleasantly floaty. He was on a clasp of bad or good, and he wouldn't be able to appreciate either, not when his eyes were drooping like they were. Well, his doctor had warned him not to drink alcohol with his medications. "It's okay, babes," Nemuri slurred, hand tossed around his shoulder. "We don't need men anyway. Fuck 'em, and fuck Sashi." It was something to focus on, a wave of burning anger in the back of his mind, like a kindled flame. Hatred. Anger sparked the match, and hatred burned within his tinder. His fingers twitched. He wanted to twist him into his capture weapon. He wanted to kiss Sashi, wanted to shove his fingers into Sashi's hair and pull. Fuck Sashi. Yeah. "It's good for you, you know?" Nemuri stumbled. All her weight fell onto Shouta, and she let out a hysterical giggle. Getting fucking hammered every once in a while's good for you. Let loose. Fuck Sashi, he doesn't deserve you anyways. You knew he was gonna cancel the wedding. Shouta shrugged. "And anyways, you'll make up. You always do. Or maybe you won't. You never really fought like this. Huh. It's kind of weird. Does this mean I'm gonna be split between the two of you now? That's like really awkward." "No. Yes. Maybe. Fuck. He couldn't think. Help me." "I don't know. Maybe, what was the question?" His words were slurred. He could hear them. He couldn't care to try and refine them, cut them into recognizable parts with sterling scissors and polish. Fuck. Maybe we should go home. I want another shot. Shouta murmured, and then they were at the bar, vodka burning a straight path down his throat. He didn't even wince. He always held his liquor better than Hizashi and Nemuri. When they had hunched over buckets or laid across each other in bathtubs, clutching at their stomachs and letting out warbled cries, he kept them soaked on water bottles and antiemetics. The liquor always seemed to hit him before it did them, though. Maybe because, when he started drinking, he did so heavily that it was sometimes difficult to figure out how to stop. "Oh my god!" Nemuri gasped. "I love this song." It was some American song, upbeat enough to be catchy and seemed to be intoxicating the crowd. Shouta didn't know English well enough to get the gist of what the song was about, and he doubted anyone around him knew either. But that didn't stop them from throwing their hair, swaying their bodies, and belting the lyrics out the top of their lungs. "It's Britney, bitch!" Nemuri shrieked at the top of her lungs, and the crowd cheered. The lights were strobing, stabbing into his skull, and Shouta let out a noise wash over him as his head throbbed angrily. "We should go outside." "What song is this?" Shouta asked, and the words sounded strange to his ear. "What?" "What song is this?" Nemuri laughed, grabbing his hands and tossing her hair as they danced in place. She was smiling in the way only drunk people could, loose and open. It was that way she had smiled at Sashi, but never at him, never at Shouta. He sometimes wondered, in high school, if Nemuri loved Hizashi, in the same way that Shouta loved Hizashi. Maybe she wanted to be engaged with him, wanted to be looking after a child with him, wanting to live with him and cook dinner with him, be his best friend until the day they died, and leave Shouta to the background. That's what he thought. I don't think Nemuri could love anyone, not like that. Nemuri didn't date people, as long as Shouta had known her. He's never seen her with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or anything else. She probably would have made a good girlfriend or wife to someone. She was loving and attentive. She made a good income, and she gave her entire soul to those she cared about. As it was, she made a fantastic friend. There was a hand on his cheek. "You okay, Shell?" she asked. Her eyebrows were furrowed together, like a caterpillar. "I'm in outer space." "Yes." His head fell to rest on her shoulder, and her small hand was buried in her hair. His skin broke out into goosebumps, not ready for the sudden touch, but he was too scared to jerk away. He didn't think he was crying. His eyes weren't burning. But Nemuri's shirt was wet now. His hands jerked back and forth as they buried themselves into his hair. Below Nemuri's, blocking her prodding fingers from his scalp, the thumb of the base marked his heartbeat. His shoulder shook. Too much, too much, too much. "Okay, Sho," Nemuri murmured. Her voice was quiet, but he could still hear her clear as day. "Let's go home, okay? Let's just go home." "I don't want to go home." The night air was cold, and it made the hot sweat on his skin sticky and tacky. His clothes were particularly glued to his skin. "I don't want to go home." "That's okay. We can go back to my apartment. I cannot drive right now." Nemuri installed a ride-share app and left her car right there in the parking lot, waving it off easily and claiming she'll go back for it sometime tomorrow. She kept a hand on Shota's arm, not on his skin, over the fabric of his shirt, and smiled when Shouta shivered in the cold. "Winter setting in, huh?" she giggled, and he groaned. If there was anything he hated more than tacky summer heat, it was cold winter mornings. Maybe he just hated being outside in general. The car that pulled up was sleek and black, and the driver was friendly, and American with a broken-up Japanese dialect. There was a few black cameras set up for his safety, and Shouta hoped that he didn't recognize them as pro-heroes. Dealing with videos of them being drunk on the internet was not going to be easy. He offered them water, and they declined. The idea of drinking anything at that moment made him physically ill. The car was quiet and dark. The engine hummed under his seat. It had all the markings of a lullaby and reminded him of a deep voice rumbling its way out of his chest cavity. Deep and dark, like black coffee filled with bitter chocolate. Nemuri pulled his head against her shoulder, and he let out a sigh as her callous hands covered his eyes, eliminating what little light was left. Now there was only the dark, her hand over his eyes, and the white noise of the engine. He was in a boat, rocking back and forth. Salt water, sinking tackily into his skin. The boat was cold, covered in splinters and chipped, lean paint, and enough rust iron supported to give him tetanus. The water was cold, frothing, and dangerous. He could tip over the side if he wanted to. It wouldn't be cold for long. He imagined it was Sasashi's hands over his eyes, instead of Nemuri's. Hizashi did that sometimes, when he was in bed resting from a headache. His hands were less callous, but his palms were still rough. Long fingers, broader palms. Not at all about Hizashi was broad. He had slim fingers, thin limbs, wired with hollowed muscles. His chest was slim and hard from years of intensive exercise. Even his hair was thin and long. His hands were fucking huge. The car stopped outside of a different building that Shouta was familiar with, and he stumbled over himself as Nemuri dragged him up the stairs. He was carefully placed against the wall as Nemuri dug her keys out of her pocket, fumbling with them as she tried to find the lock. She probably was just as drunk as he was, and she was still trying to take care of him. Nemuri was probably the best person he's ever met. I love you, he mumbled as Nemuri pushed him onto the couch, tucking a heavy blanket around his shoulders and stuffing a pillow under his head. I really love you. I love you too, hun. Nemuri laughed. She disappeared for a moment, and Shouta barely had the presence of mind to notice that she was gone, before a bucket was placed by his head. In case you get sick during the night, she explained gently. She placed a kiss on his temple. Her lips were sticky from the stickily sweet mixed drinks she's been sipping all night. She smelled like cherries and vodka. The spot she'd placed on her mouth felt tacky on his skin. He scrabbled at it with the back of his wrist like a small child. You know how. He stopped, frowned. What had he been saying? It was all mixed up in his head. His skin was crawling with ants. Beetles were nestled into his ears. You can't sleep outside, baby show. Bugs will make bleed out of your brain. He should go camping with Inko sometime. Oh, right. Well, camping was probably expensive and dangerous. Bugs. He'll take Izuku one day. You know I'm gay, right? Yes, Sho. I know you're gay. Don't worry. You're not really my type either. He wasn't sure if he should be offended or not. Instead, he chose to be reassured. The idea of dating Nemuri terrified him, and not just because she was a woman. Nemuri was an timid individual in general. Between blinks, she was gone again. Few more blinks, and she still hadn't returned. Maybe that was for the best. His tongue was screwed loose, and the words were spilling out like pressurized water, unable to be stopped or curdled. He could probably use the moment in solitude to rest, recuperate, and prepare for the hangover that was sure to wreak havoc over him soon. The dark was closing in now. He was in the water, gasping and reaching, choking on salt. The water was black, the color of the starless night, and with just the latest hint of light coming from the surface. He could swim up if he wanted to. The light was probably Sashi or Izuku coming to save him. He could save himself. He let himself sink further down. His father liked cigars, sometimes, liked to spend money on them, smoke them down to numb. Thought they made him look more sophisticated. He couldn't remember much about his father, not anymore. But when he thought about him, it was always that stretch of smoke. Maybe he's stupid. His father spoke bluntly. No unnecessary attachment. No fraudulent emotion turmoil. Facts. Shouta was different than the other little boys. He didn't connect with his father, spent most of his time with his sister. He was picky and had tantrums. He liked things a certain way, and he had trouble talking. Hadn't learned to speak completely until he was 4, 5, maybe older. Maybe quirkless children are just like that, his mother murmured. Her hands were wrinkled on a dish towel, frayed bits of smoke poking out of the edges. She was nervous a lot, but taking it out on the rag was a lot better than taking it out on herself. Her blood stained the blood floors. Or he's just stupid, defective. He was hiding just around the corner, tangled black hair hanging in front of his eyes. His teeth were gawing at his fists to keep himself quiet, to keep the indignant squawks to himself. He didn't know what defective was, but he knew stupid and stupid weren't nice words. They were words Inko had forbid him from using. Defective probably wasn't good either. His mother frowned down at her hands, with what looked like acceptance. She was quiet. His mother hardly talked to anyone but his father anymore. Barely spoke to Inko. Never talked to Shouta. Not since he was a toddler. Only if she wanted something. And Shouta couldn't give her anything. Because Shouta was bad. She'd been beautiful once, maybe. There were old photos of his mother under her bed. And she had looked gorgeous. Long, silky hair, perfect skin, unmarred by wrinkles or blemishes. She had been thin, but not skeletal. Grateful, but not crow-like. not marred and scarred and useless. Doesn't matter much anyways. It's not like he'll end up amounting to much. Probably won't hold down a job. Too stupid for the military. He'll end up starving to death and rotting in the gutter somewhere. Or inside a crack pipe. Shouta had watched a documentary about the decomposition process once. His skin felt in, and then bloated outwards. Slow decay, active decay, drying remains. Rotten didn't sound fun. Sounded like it would hurt. Shouta wondered, for a single bitter moment, if a person could rot while they were still alive, still breathing. He shut the door on the little room of thought, locked it tight behind old deadbolts and rusted hinges. Away, away, away. He swayed back and forth, head tilted. He should leave. He should leave. And he should leave. And he should leave. But his feet wouldn't move. Maybe some part of him wanted to hear the way his parents talked about him when he wasn't there. When they said nothing much at all to his face. Maybe he just liked hearing their voices for once. A gentle touch landed on his shoulder. The slim hand of his sister. A ripe, pungent smell reached his nose. Something wet seeping through his thin shirt, and touched the skin of his shoulder. He was gently returned around. The rotting body stared back at him through empty eye sockets. Strands of green hair tugged from her touslet skulls in clumps. Her jaw hung from a loose hinge. Her skin had become moldy brown, thin, clinging to her bones. She was so much taller than Shouta, practically towered over him. Her voice, frightening and airy as it was as sweet as honeycomb. Something dribbled down her chin as she spoke. A squishy palm rested on his thin cheek, the smell pungent in his nose. "It's okay, baby Shou," the girl cooed. Not Inko smiled, and it was gargantuous and horrifying and beautiful. Shouta's breath came in sharp, forced pants, halting into his chest and inhaling and exhaling his body sharply and violently. The room went dark. 2 other figures stood behind. Not Inko. Now, the sickly sweet smell grew stronger. If he stretched his imagination, he could imagine the smell was roses, or sunflowers, not rotten skin, muscles, and fat. Not Inko pressed a kiss to his forehead, with a mouth that no longer had lips. Some people are just a little bit mean. Okay, that's not the end. Do not worry, guys. That is not the end. That is not the end. But there's still one more part of this left that I'm gonna do. There's still, the chapter's not finished is what I'm saying. The chapter's not finished, not at all. There's still, half the chapter, or a little less than half the chapter. Just a little less. Here, let me see how long it's gonna take to read that. Or how long that video is gonna be. Word count. I've been a podficker for so long that, okay, it's gonna be about 10-15 minutes. That I could see a word count and be like, okay, yeah, I estimated 10 to 15 minutes. So not that long, but this chapter ended up being, what's it called? I noticed that this chapter is just a tad bit longer than the rest of the chapters, but, oh my god. Yeah, no, I don't think it's gonna get solved in a day. I don't think it's gonna get solved by the end of this chapter, and we're gonna be left on the huge cliffhanger. It's been 2 years since this got... Okay. What? As always, I'll start introducing the next fanfiction that's coming up, because this one's one that I'm really excited for, and I really hope it gets a lot of love, because I know that this ship normally does not get many fics, and often gets buried down deep below the depths of what is, male x male ships, boys love ships, MLM, not multi-level thingy, no, men loving men, no, but it gets buried deep down, and that is Toga x Ochako. I love that ship with all my heart. It is sweet, it is cool, it is interesting, it's a cool dynamic, it's an interesting setup, and it's interesting. I mean, like, at a baseline, it is, you know, a girl who loves her family so deeply that she would go into a profession to make her family proud. In the sense of, like, hey, they make a lot of money, let me make a lot of money for you guys, right? Who, on a fundamental basis, I feel like she's a very family-orientated, friend-orientated, love-orientated, like she would do anything for her friends and her family, and in turn, probably her significant other as well. And then we have Toga, who all she wants to be is accepted and loved, and be like the person she loves. I feel like maybe that aspect of her, part of me feels like this, like maybe that aspect of her is just her trying to fit in, and she loves this person, so if she becomes this person, then other people will love her in turn. So it's a lot of, like, I want acceptance and people to love me, with a girl who loves her, you know, her loved ones so desperately so that she would do anything to make them happy. Perfect pair. No, in reality, it's more than just that. It's deeper than that. It's super interesting. It's super cool, especially with what recently happened in the manga and stuff like that. For those who are watching and have not seen the manga, you're just gonna have to wait till, you know, it gets, you know, animated. So, yeah. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.